People no longer bound by their non-disclosure agreements. What can you now disclose? Funny story. Moments after I was unceremoniously fired because my tech skills were found to be insufficient. The bosses who fired me demanded to know the whereabouts of a hugely important computer file I had worked on. I refused to help them. I even cited the exact language of the NDA I was compelled to sign. I am prohibited from disclosing details of my employment with anyone, including past and current employees of the company. I expounded, adding, "So ask someone who works here. Because I don't." It was a great fuck you moment that I still cherish 5 years later. But now I think I can disclose the truth. I only hid behind the NDA language because I had no clue where to find their damn computer file. Or even where to look. I suck with computers. The cupcake shop I used to work for claimed everything was homemade, but used Pillsbury cake mix as a base. My graphic designer best friend won my town's Design the Centennial logo contest. Despite having never set foot in the town. I worked for the radio station, and just did an interview with one of the organizers, where he lamented that there weren't very many entries. So I called my friend and said, "Want in on this?" He said, "Sure," as he lived on the other side of the country at the time. I spent the next day texting him photos of the town for inspiration. Anyway, when he won and they found out he was a professional graphic designer who lived on the other side of the country, they made him and me sign NDAs because the town was afraid people would think they brought in a ringer. Edit. Wow. This kind of blew up. So let me answer some of the more common questions being brought up. 1. What's a ringer? A ringer is professional who's brought into a contest in order to guarantee favored results. 2. Why did I have to sign the NDA? Well, they unveiled the logo at a great big ceremony where they presented the prize money. I think it was a couple $100. And since my friend lived on the other side of the country, he asked if I could accept on his behalf. I wound up not going, because we were broadcasting from another event that day. So the mayor accepted on his behalf. 3. Where is this? Canada. A small town in Alberta. That's all I'm comfortable sharing. I was a contractor for NASA. I still fully support the agency. But I was extremely bugged when I learned that each separate NASA center, e.g. JPL, Kennedy, Ames, Goddard, hides many of its inventions and breakthroughs from the other centers so that when HQ is ready to assign a big mission, and a lot of dollars, to one center, they have a better chance to compete over the others. Look what we invented. Ames can't do this over there. Give us the next moon orbiter. The downside is that there is a ton of reinvention and duplicated efforts going on. Sometimes years of work go down the drain when another center does the same thing faster. My perspective was, you all work for NASA. Share knowledge. Collaborate. I was frequently ordered to tone down anything revealing when speaking to other centers. I dug up some ancient bones, gold, and Mycenaean tombs. I couldn't discuss the finds until the institution who ran the archaeological dig could publish the data. You can read about it here. Edit to add. I'm a classics student, not the one running the whole dig. But my role in it was very much legal and official law. We knew to dig there because there was another tomb next to it. And it's located near a big Mycenaean Bronze Age palace. I only dug there for one summer, but it was a blast. If you're interested in archaeology, you should see if there are any local groups that you can volunteer with. I used to do data analysis of revenue management for some big companies. Many companies have no clue about their data or their revenue streams. I'm talking several $1 million of revenue disappearing in the pipeline and no one knowing what happened with it. Or even caring really. There were multiple times I had to inform clients that we had huge gaps in their costs and we needed to find the missing numbers somewhere in order to make our final reports correct, and was met with the paraphrased reply, "Just sprinkle the missing costs over the existing one. We just want the final total to be correct." All the companies cared about if the amount of money they have at the end of the year is higher than at the beginning, and anything that happens in between is inconsequential. I objected at first to my bosses, saying that what we were doing was incorrect. But they said to just do as the client said. In the end, I got disillusioned, and whenever our clients came with requests that made no mathematical or logical sense, I'd just execute as requested and let their analysts figure out later that the analysis they paid 6 figures for was basically nonsense. I didn't care. because I had documentation of all their requests and my objections which were thoroughly ignored. I had a few cases where clients came back disgruntled several months down the line after some in-house analyst had done a deep dive of their data and came up with objections that I had pointed out months before. I'd usually dig up the relevant emails and clear my name. My choice of action was to tell them to pound sand. But my bosses always bent over backwards for clients. So we'd have to do the cleanup I anticipated. In the end, I learned most of our economy is held together by duct tape and wishful thinking. At most 10% of people working at big companies are competent and carry the bulk of the work, and rarely are the competent ones the ones in charge. Edit. I want to clarify something for everyone who's talking about embezzlement and people lining their pockets. I can assure you that in the data I was working on, this was very unlikely. The money streams I was analyzing went to other companies as costs. So if they had literally disappeared, someone would notice. This missing money was really just a case of utter incompetence. People just too lazy or stupid to properly keep track of what goes where. I'm sure that if we got all the data from partnering companies, we would eventually be able to track everything precisely. We were unfortunately limited to whatever data our clients provided, and we would rarely get data from other companies as they're quite privy about sharing it with third parties. This rant was not about corruption but rather incompetence. You know NDAs are only good if you have the money to sue? Worked with a company that didn't pay me. So I told them their NDA didn't apply. They threatened to sue. My response: you can't even afford to pay me. You sure as hell can't afford to sue. Well, this is already public knowledge. And they forgot to have me sign an NDA anyway. But Savannah College of Art and Design's Ombudsman Sophia Bagnali, the independent person who's supposed to represent students in cases of unfair treatment by the school, married one of the school's vice presidents too and is now Sophia Aledo. It's definitely a conflict of interest, but she's still serving as independent ombudsman. And currently refusing to help students get any kind of refund now that all their classes are online and they don't have access to the expensive equipment their expensive tuition is supposed to be paying for. Edit. Wow. This blew up. For anyone affected by SCAD, whether it was the abrupt closure of the Hong Kong campus, financial burden, lack of access to facilities, poor e-learning quality, etc., you do still have recourse even if the ombudsman may be working against you. SCAD's accreditation is up for review with SACS-COC this year. SACSCOC will accept written complaints mailed to their office. Link below. Make sure to include documentation. Things advertised by admissions, emails, financial statements, etc. That, unfortunately, seems to be the only way to make them improve. Edit 2. Sorry. I almost forgot. There were a large number of Chinese students who were accepted and given the standard due date for their enrollment fee of a few months, but then, after the outbreak of COVID-19, received another email from your admissions representative demanding payment of the enrollment fee within 3 days. That is not okay. Whether you paid the fee or not, please take the time to file a complaint with SACS-COC and send them that material. Both the acceptance documents and the later email demanding payment in 3 days. When I was fired from Auntie Anne's in 2010, I signed a 10-year non-compete (NDA) contract, promising not to detail the baking secrets or work for another pretzel establishment. Well, that ended this year, so now I can run out and start a pretzel store because the secret I was keeping was making pretzels literally requires 2 products. One of them being water and the other a large bag of pretzel meal, dust, powder. Quite literally anyone with $2,500 can start a pretzel stand and make perfectly fine pretzels. It's not difficult whatsoever. Edit. I signed the letter when I was hired, but I got a copy with my termination letter. I think I'm finally ready to let the world know my secret. If you've ever used VeriSite, the loading spinners you see when the report loads aren't waiting for anything. People kept complaining that reports were coming back too fast. So it must not be working right. It doesn't take long to complete a few hundred Google searches simultaneously. So the loading spinner just makes you wait a few seconds longer, so it feels like more is happening. So glad to finally get that off my chest. Bonus fact. Edit. I also added applying phlebotinum, reticulating splines, and looking for cat memes as random loading messages. But they wouldn't let me do harassing at Ted Cruz on Twitter. I worked at a small bakery in New York City when I was younger. Every morning the bakery would take their day-old cupcakes and deliver them to a tour company that did Sex and the City tours. The tour company would pass our cupcakes off as cupcakes from Magnolia, and significantly much more popular bakery. The owner of the company is an absolute psycho. They have been trying to hire developers for years now. And despite paying really well, they can't keep them. I quit after 3 days. I was trying to help out on a high-priority bug on my 3rd day. When I said all the requests to X endpoint are failing, to which he replied, I see 1 out of approximately 500 requests succeeding. Does that sound like all to you? He then called a company-wide all-hands meeting, and proceeded to tell everyone how important it is that we all speak carefully. And that we don't need fucking retards like me lying to the company, making it harder to diagnose issues. I told him to go fuck himself and quit on the spot. Turns out the company has a big history of this. My boss, who had been there for 2 weeks, had tried to quit the week prior, but was convinced to stay on to meet me. He left a few days after me. Apparently a few people got together and tried to tell the owner that he needs to watch how he talks to people. And he blew up on them about it too. I later heard that I was something like the 10th person to quit within their first month in a row. The sad truth is that the dude actually seems pretty smart, but has been acting like a megalomaniac while he pisses his money away and abuses his employees that are for whatever reason unwilling to leave. Star Wars Battlefront 2 EA will have microtransactions. The NDA was signed in 2016. I was getting more and more worried as the release date kept getting closer, and then it happened. The backlash was so strong that EA went down in the history books as most downvoted comment in Reddit's history. McDonald's made me sign a NDA regarding a robbery that took place during a graveyard shift. They made me take a fucking polygraph test because they thought my ex and I were involved due to the simple fact that I had stopped by that day to pick up some documents. I was a manager. I had business to do. Fuck you. McMierda. Edit. Thanks for the silver. And LT. 3. Edit 2. There are many questions. Some wonder if I made this up. Request details or explanations. I'll give some extra context and I'll head out. I was around 19 to 20 years old. This was almost a decade ago. I was pretty naive then. By the time I realized this might have been illegal, I mentioned to a co-manager and she advised me to not bring it up again, as to not involve myself in trouble or damage my future job prospects. I worked at a franchise located in a rural area with an almost entire Latino population, where everyone knows each other. I took home some of the weekly schedules and production projections for highlighting. They would make me do this highlighting shit weekly. The store manager in charge would allow me to do this on a weekly basis. The area supervisor called to tell me I'd have to take a polygraph test. He mentioned that I could decline taking the polygraph test, but I'd be taken off the schedule and I wouldn't be trusted again. The police showed up to the restaurant, picked me up, held me at the investigation building for around 8 hours, and then they sent me home. When I passed the polygraph test, the area supervisor called again to mention that he appreciated that I took the polygraph. Glad to hear I passed, and that he would always have my back. Eye roll. I left the job at McDonald's in 2014. At least it makes for a story to tell. I had to sign an NDA to work at this tech company. And I'm still waiting to accidentally overhear something cool so I can feel special for knowing something important but being legally barred from disclosing it. I worked at a gym. And in the showers there was yellow shampoo and blue body wash in pump dispensers. I found out that the only difference between the two soaps was the color. Edit. Memory jog, as it was 25 plus years ago. Hand soap was blue. Body wash was green. Shampoo was yellow. All the same. Edit 2. As funny as the replies are, it wasn't an NDA about soap. It was just a generic employment NDA to protect the privacy of members and business affairs of the gym. I used to work for a large gas station chain. I worked at its warehouse where it creates a lot of the donuts. The room was really hot, so we were always sweating. There's some machines where the donuts get glazed in chocolate. They're these small machines, they look almost like a barbecue grill. They always wanted us to be super fast glazing the donuts. Working in a hot room and working at super fast speeds, it was natural for a lot of people's sweat to just drip in the chocolate underneath us. Never eat the chocolate donuts from a gas station. I sued my boss for sexual harassment. I'm guessing I'm still not supposed to tell, but fuck them. Won some money. Got a better job. In the IT world, it is often that the piece of internal software or system that gives your company an edge is not quite as huge a deal as it seems. Often it is not much more than a couple of technologies mashed together to automate things in a way nobody else is doing yet. And those things are fiercely guarded. I had cases where people saw stuff in action and tried to replicate it but could not because they were missing just one small piece. I'd rather not risk it. But let's just say hypothetically that a certain tech company who is inside, keeps its campuses pretty subpar. I'm talking old, run-down buildings that need dozens of buckets everywhere to catch water every time it rains. They bully companies and the local economy to put up with their horseshot cause they know they're too big to hear a no. Hypothetically. Edit. I feel like I'm about to get a very angry and legal jargon-filled phone call. Also, I'm leaving horseshot, cause I think it's funny. Never had an NDA on this, but if I give too much info, I'll get tagged and likely get in serious trouble. BCBS had a severe security breach back in 2007. If you were with them in a certain area of the country and ever called them the number for help on your account, all of your personal info was caught by a third party. Every caller, every piece of data. They never disclosed this breach. Edit. Clarification. The head shop, smoke shop I used to work at sold whippets, nitrous cartridges, behind the counter under the guise of being cake ingredients. All someone had to do was walk in and say they were looking to bake a cake. I'm not sure if they still do it, but I wouldn't be surprised. I once had to sign an NDA to get a price on a printer for my sign shop. This was a printer that was only sold by one distributor, by the way, so there wasn't even any direct competition on this particular model. I think their gimmick was that if they make a really big deal out of giving you this super secret pricing that you'd be lulled into thinking it was really something special. Edit. Interesting comment by you, Beard Stashman below, who probably has the right idea as to what was going on with this practice. Their machine doesn't do what they want it to. Because they designed it and they're not engineers. Also, all investments into their company as investment into a long-term project that they're making out will take way less time than it will. Edit. I'm afraid I never worked for Theranos. Or Tesla. I actually can't name the company, but it hires 2 people currently. The book you're reading might only be a bestseller because the author had enough money to buy thousands and thousands of copies, have them shipped to a warehouse for storage, and eventually destroyed. I used to work at a zoo. I've got a few. One day, electricity failed, so the polar bears and wolves were able to break out of their barbed-wired compounds. Zookeeper told me this while I was located in a kiosk that was situated right next to both the wolves and polar bears. Yikes. Luckily, they decided to not test the fences that day. A few baboons escaped. Zookeepers had to shoot one and tranquilize the others. Supervisor told me I would be fired immediately if I called the press. Thanks. A Swedish car brand called us to ask if we were willing to rent them a moose for a commercial. We told them no. We do not rent out our animals. Probably the biggest one. One of our zookeepers saw that they had too much of a certain rat-like species. He was tasked to shoot them, but didn't have the heart. So he released them into the wild, without our supervisors knowing. Few years later, we have reports of these animals actually causing destruction to our dikes. Oops. Had to keep them a secret while working there. But have been working other jobs for a few years now. Edit. Changed a spelling error. Sorry LGBTQ community. English is not my native language. I signed an NDA after negotiating a 6-figure settlement with my mortgage lender. Back in 2013, the bank illegally sold my home. While I was living there and making monthly payments. I discovered this when new owners evicted me and my 3 kids. At the time, I thought someone was trying to steal my identity, etc. I spent the next 2 years writing legal documents and had to represent myself in court. The bank owned every legit legal firm I contacted. Also, the first lawyer I hired took my last $7,000 and was promptly disbarred for misconduct with previous cases. I had no money, no home, but I had a laptop, printer and access to the county court law library. We were about a week away from selecting a jury when we came to a settlement agreement. In the end, each of my kids, now in their 20s, got an inexpensive new car and I live at the beach. Which bank, you ask? I can't tell you the name. But might I suggest that it rhymes with case. They settled because they were worried that if the case went to trial, it would become public. Then, everyone would know, for certain, that they had lied, cheated and swindled to steal homes from hard-working people. The bank would lose when no one took out new loans with them. Edit. I received a posting on my front door. I went to the eviction court and lost. Because technically the new owners paid for my house. I was given 7 days to move all my stuff, had lived there 13 years, or face the sheriff. I had 3 kids. I didn't want the drama of handcuffs. So we packed and moved. Then sought relief through the court system. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.